My very
Perfect time to learn how to discriminate, huh?
Enough of that going on. Come on.
Hey, I have another question for Ben. Is my
I'm going
friend
to turn off all the chitter chatter in the background. So if anyone wants to speak, then you just turn the microphone back on again.
Hey, Ben, I have a question. Did my
Yes.
friends join our company? I referred.
Yes. Yes, you
Okay.
did. And you should also have received your first referral payment, but you haven't been home, so you probably don't know that.
Oh, no, not a big deal. I'm just make sure everything is done. So.
Yes, you did. Thank you for.
Okay. Well, I owe all a Chinese guy. That's all. I report everybody here.
I'm going to turn you all off. So there you go. So like I said, if anybody wants to speak, you need to turn the microphone back on again. So why are we doing this today? Because we've had a couple of discussions lately about what we can and cannot do. So we decided that that might be a good idea to look at what processes and policies we actually have. And also because Danny told me recently that he sees an increase in lawsuits filed by tenants over discrimination. He at some point said he had 3 brokers calling him in one day because they're being sued over something related to discrimination of tenants. So clearly, maybe not in Maxim, but in some brokerages, there is a need for this. And the most common issue is what they call disparate impact or treatment, where you actually don't intend to discriminate someone, but you accidentally do it anyway. Like for example, if you're suggesting to a wheelchair person that they maybe shouldn't look at a four-story apartment, or even asking if a tenant has children. If they get denied later, they can sue you because they can claim that you didn't allow them into the tenancy because of their familial status. Commenting on the size of the family can also be an issue. So basically, anything you discuss that relates to a protected class can later be seen as you trying to discriminate people. So the long and the short of that is never discuss anything related to protected classes with a tenant or maybe even a buyer. Never include anything about protected classes in an application, and never convey any information you know about the tenant that has to do with their class situation to a seller or landlord, because who knows what they do with that information. So what can we talk about with tenants, really? We can talk about anything that relates to their ability to pay. Not really much. If they bring something up, obviously we can, if they say they love their children, that's not a problem, but we really can't ask if they have 4 or 5 children. So what can we actually use as a basis for qualifying a tenant? We can use their credit score, their income to debt ratio, their past evictions, whether or not they're employed, if they have any pets, that is, if there's a clear pet policy in place for the property. If there's no policy, then we don't know what pets are allowed and not allowed. And it's worth noting that any sort of assistant animals, that's not a pet. That's a working animal. We can discuss past bankruptcies. We can ask how many people will occupy the unit, because that might be an issue related to occupancy rates, but what their relation is to each other is irrelevant. And some people think we can discuss criminal history, but that's something that's really dangerous to get into because of the possible disparate treatment that can entail, because some protected classes have a higher rate of criminal convictions than others. So the main thing is that all tenants must be treated exactly the same way and only based on their ability to pay the rent. So for that purpose, we introduced some criteria that will be the criteria for people who apply through Maxim, unless the landlord has other criteria, and we must have them in writing, and they must apply to all their properties, because they too can't treat people any differently. And I'm going to share my screen with you if I can figure it out. Oh, there we go. So, if you can see it, nod or raise your hand or something. Thank you. So these are the criteria that we agreed upon. Maxim, that minimum credit score of 600, income to debt ratio 35% or less, that the pre-tax income must be at least 2.5 times the annual rent, no evictions in the last 3 years, they have to have verifiable employment, pets are by definition allowed unless otherwise stated in a listing, no bankruptcies in the last 5 years, and applications must be processed in the order received, and the first applicant who passes all criteria will be offered the lease. And we will no longer perform criminal background checks unless required by the landlord. And I'll get back to that in a second. Actually, I'll get back to it now. Next. So if they want to use criminal background check as a criteria, they must have a clear written policy on how to accept or deny, and they must have a statement from a reputable fair housing attorney confirming that the policy is not in violation of fair housing regulation and will not cause disparate treatment or impact. So I'm going to take my screen away if I can. So hang on a second. Oh, crap. Sorry. Never mind. You'll have to see my screen for the rest of this. So the new application. Yes.
We do see you. So I'm sorry, I don't know if I missed it, but on these, this is obviously for rentals.
Yes.
So this is if we're going to be handling the rental property. It's not if I have a renter that I'm going to go show a property to.
Not if you're showing some other brokerage's rental, but if you're showing, if you are placing a tenant for a landlord who works with Maxim, this is what it has to be.
Okay, gotcha.
Like I said, the landlord can have their own policies, but we need to have them in writing, and we need to have assurance that he is treating everyone the same. Gotcha. Because we are liable if he is discriminating, and then we're liable, and which is also why we will process all the applications and tell him who qualifies. And if he doesn't take that first person that qualifies, then basically we really can't work with him, because you have to give it to the first person that qualifies. So the new process we have is that you can now send your property address to that email on the screen, broker@maximrealtors.com, and we'll email you a unique application link that you can give to your applicants. They go online, complete an application, and when they have done so, we will review it in the order they completed it, and we'll review it against the criteria that we have or that has been agreed with the landlord. If the tenant meets the criteria, we'll follow up by requesting documentation and verify employment and all that good stuff. And if that all checks out, he'll be approved and you can write a lease. And then after that, we added the payment thing in here. First month's rent should then be made payable to Maxim, and security deposit still to pay directly to the landlord. And these are the fees that we'll be charging. First month's rent from the landlord, $30 screening fee per applicant, which is any person over 18. And that'll be charged directly by the software we're using. They don't pay that to Maxim, they pay that directly when they enter their information into the application. And then when we're ready to make the lease, we'll charge $125 processing fee. So, and that concludes what I have to say, and I was hoping there'll be lots of questions and
So the screening fee is not a background check then, evidently. What are you screening?
The screening fee is a background check, yes, but only financial background, you could say. Or we don't do the criminal background check because there's a high risk that it can be seen as disparate discrimination or disparate impact.
Ben, did Danny talk about some of the lawsuits that are coming out for discrimination against people with like felony backgrounds? Or
He did. I mean, one of the best examples of how you can get in trouble without really wanting to get in trouble is a tenant calls you up and say, "Hey, I have a criminal conviction. Can I rent this property?" And you say, "Hang on a minute, I'll call the landlord." That's enough to get you in trouble. There needs, if you have a policy about it, it needs to be clear and in place so everybody can be sure that everybody is treated the same.
So my question on that, and you guys know that I've worked on both sides, so I know kind of the answer. When it's an HOA, like one that I just rented, the HOA has a requirement that they need a background check. So it's not like we're denying the tenant based on that. It's up to the HOA. So that's discrimination is on them.
We have to disclose that what they do, and
But they require the actual report.
yeah, you have to disclose that there's HOA approval involved, and that's on them what they do. Yes.
It's just like Karen, when they do like their own credit requirements and so forth. You know, we've never had credit requirements until now. So before that, people would always be like, "Oh, what's your minimum credit score?" And we'd be like, "Oh, we don't have one. You're fine. You know, just put the application in." Now we do have credit score because we can't do anything else almost, you know, so we kind of had to decide what can we implement to hopefully assist with weeding out possibly some of the ones that may in fact have, because the things we can't refuse for are insane.
But and the other reason that we have to have a set credit score is because if we don't, if we give one with a 580 tenancy and another one with a 625, if that doesn't matter which one is the disabled person or which one is the person of color, if we preference one over the other, we have a problem.
Yeah.
so it's a loophole in the law right now, right? The law wasn't intended for what it is right now with them, with these attorneys in South Florida, what they're doing by these discrimination lawsuits for people with felonies and criminal records, correct?
Not entirely, because HUD actually also are very into this. Because they talk a lot about disparate discrimination, having to discriminate, and they do talk about criminal background as a problem because they say that a lot of people in certain areas or from certain backgrounds, they have a higher conviction rate than other people. So by refusing them tenancy, you're basically discriminating that whole class. So there's not just rogue attorneys in Miami, it's also HUD we're up against on this.
Well, I'll give a prime example. Like, so I rented one of my personal properties out, the house out in Fort Myers Beach, the Flamingo house. And the guy, we pulled his this is a while ago, we pulled his background check and he had 2 counts of embezzlement and multiple battery accounts. And it was like domestic battery or whatever the case is. I'm like, you've got some shit. And we're talking and he was like pleading like, hey, you know, we need a place, this and that, this is where we want to be. Anyway, gave him a shot. They moved in and what was it, Jolie, maybe like 6 months into their rent, all these issues, like the wife or girlfriend or whatever she was calling me at like 2:00 in the morning saying that he's coming after her and he took her keys and wallet and threw it in the water. And
Okay, now.
And I'm like, why is she calling me? And sure enough, the cops got called and all this kind of stuff. But it's, you know,
Jen had a conniption and told Steve, do not rent to these people. Steve was like, I gotta give some people a chance sometimes. And it's my own personal property. I'll take a chance on them. Jen was like,
I
don't
should have
do
been
it.
sued
Steve."
for that, huh?
You can.
see, I did the right thing.
I was just thinking that. How do you remove your personal fear or feeling or what? Because you have to kind of remove that and just look on paper.
You
But
I
can.
think that,
yeah,
that is tough because
But
I
you-
know Jen always says that too. Like, she's like, you know, and we've helped guide other agents there, like get the personal out of it. Like, you can't have this, like, but this lady is a single mom and she's got 2 kids and like, we've got to make it work. Like,
But
The
you
rules are the
can't
rules.
have a policy against people like him. You just have to have it verified by somebody who knows what they're talking about, i.e. an attorney who specializes in discrimination cases. So the wording of the policy is correct.
Just that, you know, the last one that I had over in Saturnia Lakes in Naples, they moved out, but while I was there and I was not getting the phone calls, the HOA was calling the homeowner, and I guess there was issues going on with the tenants in place. But when I got there to go do the final walkthrough as they were moving out, a police car pulled up and they were like, is so-and-so here? And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. They're not on the lease. And she's like, that's my son. And I said, was he living here this whole time? Because he's not on here and he's over 18. And she said, yes, he's been here. Well, he damaged the house very bad. She had locks that they couldn't get out of the, like, she locked them in their room. There was only supposed to be 2 kids. There was like 7 kids. They had bunk beds everywhere. She locked them in their room. They would cut the screens to get out. He had anger issues. And that day when he was leaving, he almost ran over a kid in the neighborhood, and the HOA called and said, they are never allowed back in this community again. So I was like, okay, that's not on me. That's on the HOA now.
No. But yeah, but these are all extreme situations, I would say, but they do happen. I mean, I've had someone set fire to my property that luckily didn't catch a lot, but there was a daughter trying to commit suicide. So it's not. Yeah.
Jeez.
well, Jen just had a tenant recently. She's been renting the same place for years. She was totally fine. Something happened to her the last year where she got a boyfriend and like just went to the other side or something. And when she vacated, Jen and I walked into the house and we were like, what happened in here? Like, the place was absolutely destroyed. And Jen, are you on? I don't remember what the seller's up to right now in repairs.
What he's up to?
Yeah, like his total bill just for.
It's probably $20,000.
Oh
This
my
is not a
God.
joke. Like, had to
Cabinets, appliances.
everything. The house had to be completely gutted, basically.
Yeah, but did they have a criminal background or any flags?
Yeah.
coming up?
She was okay, fine, and I'm not kidding. She was in there for years, and then she got married and had this guy move in, and it all changed.
But the guy wasn't on the lease, right? So what happens in that case, Ben? If somebody moves in, they're not on the lease.
To be honest, I don't know the answer to that question.
It's hard because you'd have to go after them, and when they don't have anything,
Yeah.
what are you gonna get from them?
Yeah.
I mean, they moved out, so I don't think you can do an eviction. You'd have to go after them for damage, get an attorney, and they don't have anything.
Yeah.
Good times. Tenants are fun. Rentals are
Yay.
better.
Well,
And I-
I'll tell you, if you do run into situations like this, even the Flamingo house where that guy was belligerent and everything else, and it happened multiple times, I just met up with him and I was like, look, I'm going to give you your security deposit back and we're not going to have any issues, but you guys should move out. And I don't know, I'm hoping that's legit and legal, but I gave him the option to move out and they took it. And sure enough, the house was damaged somewhat, so I still had to do some repairs and everything. he punched through. I noticed the bedroom door was not closing all the way. I was like, this is a different door. So sure enough, he probably punched through the other door. But, I negotiated the way out of it as opposed to just letting this kind of continue. And I'm hoping that's okay.
But you kicked him out because he was damaging your property and he was a danger to other people in the neighborhood, basically. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I'm sure you gave him a written notice, Steve, whatever the requirement. It was either like.
Yeah, it was this gun, baby.
Yeah, I'm sure you did that. So that was legal.
Yeah, he was a big guy. I wouldn't mess with him.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the beef that I have. Like, if you're putting somebody in a rental property and they have a history of being combative and they could potentially turn that anger on the neighbors, that sucks.
That's something we possibly could work into our policy, but then we would have to have an attorney who is a specialist in this area. Make sure that we word it right.
Ben, can I say something?
Yes.
This is Kat Batten. I think you need to look at your qualifications because felonies can be described in different ways, such as violent felonies.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine renting to a violent felon, period.
Exactly.
And the other thing is references. Do you have that in your list of credentials that they should have at least 1, 2, 3 references from previous landlords? Is that considered discriminatory in your view?
Yeah, sorry, but that didn't make it to the list, but yes, that is in the application process.
Yeah, that should definitely be there because that's the only protection you really have.
So
The problem with
what if one of the references comes back and they say, and the they're probably not going to put a prior landlord on there if they destroyed the house, right?
Probably not.
well,
Where have you been living last year? A tent?
That's a disqualification in my view.
Yeah, it's just we're in a very litigious society, so it's a slippery slope.
The unfortunate thing is that these laws, I've worked with rentals and it's very frustrating. They protect tenants so much, and I understand the intent. It's because tenants were discriminated against, but it's almost, I watch it every single time where a landlord gets stuck with, like for example, you couldn't shut off their water if they owe you whatever. There's so much that you can't do because they're protected. And some of these, unfortunately, not a lot, but there's some bad eggs that they're aware of the system and they're aware of the laws, and they take advantage of that too.
In other municipalities, I'm calling you from Iowa. If I, as a landlord, rent to a tenant who has a known criminal background, I can be held liable for what he does. That is a city code. So just bear that in mind. You need to research some of that in your area because that is how some of these cities are protecting from violent felons and so on coming into the city. If the landlord is renting to people dealing drugs, if the landlord is renting to people who are doing that sort of thing, then they can have liability. So what they've done is they've offered to actually do the criminal background check. So what I do is I send them a signed document from the prospective tenant stating that they will allow them to do that. And then the city does that and sends it back. And so then you have the option to rent or not rent, but you are going to be liable if they're dealing drugs in that unit. The city is holding you accountable for some of the activities of your tenants. That's how they're knuckling down on some of these slumlords.
I don't believe we have any of those rules here in Florida, but I'll check.
Ben, I didn't hear the first part or what you guys.
I said I don't believe we have any of those rules here in Florida, but I'll check.
Right, I meant as far as, I know when I worked with the rental company, we had a very close relationship with Harry Heise. So all of our forms and standards and everything, Harry Heise is local here, and they're like they write half the contracts and like the leases and all that. They teach classes at the board, but we attended a lot of their classes. We spent money doing things, you pay them to create leases. So when we did have, the occasional question or so, they might not have charged us, but I don't know what he's doing real time, if what kind of classes he's having available, but laws are changing so much sometimes, Sue was saying with municipal and stuff, that it's just one of those things that we do have to keep up on.
Mhm.
It's separate from our real estate license or realtor requirements when it comes to rentals and fair housing.
Yeah, we did most of this in collaboration with Danny Willison, and I will not say that there's things we haven't overlooked, but I'll look into the possibilities of including some criminal background in this. He advised against it, but obviously I will see what other people say.
Yeah, I will say, guys, we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, going back and forth, because we implemented a new online system, which is really cool. Again, for your tenants, they don't have to fill out our old crappy application anymore. It's all streamlined and online now. So it's really nice, professional, quick and easy. So that's been a plus. With doing so, we started going through all the laws of everything. And again, speaking to one of our attorneys, Danny, about it all, Jen and I got an applicant, and that's kind of how a lot of it started too. We sent it into Ben and Danny and Jay, and because we had concerns about it, and basically all of our concerns, we were told, doesn't matter. You can't use that.
Yeah.
And Jen and I were both like, we don't want to put him in the house. And they were like, you don't have a leg to stand on.
And I would say I didn't want to put that person in the house either, but it's but we really didn't have a choice. And that's what formed these policies. That was, and it's basically trying to protect us from anything that might give us liability or discrimination.
Another thing to talk about, guys, it's up to you what rental you're taking. I'm sorry, I'm not taking a rental that's $800 off of a certain part of town, full disclosure. I'm not doing it. A lot of the rentals that we deal with, if we're taking any, our most recent one was, it's $2,000 a month in Bellaterra. So Bellaterra has their own requirements first off. So you kind of already know based on certain requirements. I'm dealing with somebody that has to have at least $4,000 just to move into the property. And that's just for first and security. You're kind of dealing with, a different clientele. Not saying people like that don't do bad things. I get it, but.
I don't know, my tenant that was heavily convicted of a lot of things was paying almost $2,000 a month, and he sucked.
Yeah. But again, knowing that Bellaterra does their own background thing as well. And that's just it. I let them know, hey, we're doing, we check everything. Also, I did just confirm, we do check with their current employer, former employer, current landlord, and previous landlord. And we do have references as well that are requested and checked. It also shows eviction history. And I don't think, was that on your list, Ben? I don't recall.
Yes.
Yeah, we do have eviction history as well. So usually if you're, been evicted previously, again, that kind of shows what kind of person you are. And we'll have this in a PDF document that you'll be able to, of course, upload into your supplements if you do take on a rental listing. Another thing to point out, if you're not 100% comfortable and confident with taking on a tenant placement listing, feel free to refer it out. Jen and myself do a lot of them, so feel free just to refer it over, and we'll, handle it on your behalf if you're not comfortable doing it. There's a lot to rentals that people are not aware of.
By the way, I want to point out that tenant that I had, his credit was horrible. So
Point proven.
maybe some of the criminals don't have the best credit.
But generally, spending time behind bars does affect your credit. So a lot of the time, people with criminal background will not be able. I know that they're going to come comments about this, but so I know it doesn't work all the time. But most of the time, people with a bad criminal history also has bad credit.
What's our minimum policy? 600.
600.
Yeah, I would think that you would go to 650 minimum, and then also 5 years on eviction, not 3.
I have a question.
I'm not sure why.
Sorry, Kat, go ahead.
I'm just not sure why you chose that. There might be a legal reason, but I personally wouldn't rent to anybody that has been evicted in the last 3 years, and I wouldn't rent to anybody with a 650 or lower score. And I feel like the reason is because you have an obligation to your owner. You also have a legal commitment to the owner. So think about that when you put together these policies in writing.
First of all, that's why we say that the owners can amend as long as we know they use the same criteria everywhere. They don't have to follow our minimums. And yes, we did discuss different credit scores and different lengths, and there's no particular legal basis for the scores we settle upon. You can get a loan at a 580, sometimes lower, which is why we settled for 600. And I think we even discussed 5 years as eviction, but settled for 3 years. But I would say that part could be open for discussion if we can take that up again and discuss Joey, Jen, what do you think?
I do like 5 years for eviction.
Yeah, we said that initially, and we also did discuss the 650, but we know that that's going to weed out a lot of people. And again, like I have a family right now, they've been hit by unfortunate circumstances, but they're a really good family, but their credit scores are 625 and 615. Like, again, and they're in the house that's $2,000 a month in Belvedere. You know, it's. I think if you're at 650, you can get a loan. Evan.
Yeah, 620 is the new, at least for my institution. So, but before coronavirus, we were going below 600. So I think 600. I know 600. You know, you can get a loan, and there are certain lenders that will go 580, like Ben was saying. So.
And again, when you're requiring first and last, if you've got $4,000 in your pocket, I can probably sell you a house.
Yes.
Yep.
So for me, the balance was to try to weed out the worst, but not exclude everyone. Because if we exclude everyone, we're not going to get a tenant.
Ben's a little more like Steve, giving people chances.
And you got to remember, you have the employment too. So I mean, that's another
big thing.
Pretty big thing. So, but I do like the 5-year eviction. Not an eviction thing.
We can change that. We haven't put it into effect yet. So if that's the thing, we can change that.
Yeah, if anyone else wants to say anything else about it, I mean.
My only question with the criminal background not doing that anymore, what if you come across like a pedophile? And I know they have to disclose when they move, but if you're in the process of doing the application with them and they're not just going to come forward and be like, yep, I'm a pedophile, then what do you do? I mean, sometimes the HOA will have their own process, but I'm certainly not going to put somebody like that in a community where there are children living next door.
I don't think you
got that
against a pedophile if they are registered and everything else. If they're in the zone,
do I have to run through the system, every person that I meet, to see if they are registered or not before I give them an application?
Yeah, but Ben, I could be wrong, but I don't think you can even you can't even blink an eye at that, basically. As long as they're registered, it's none of your business, basically.
Sadly, I totally agree with but I don't. I actually think you're on very thin ice if you start denying pedophiles tenancy.
Yeah.
Then I just won't do rentals. I'll just pass them all to you guys. How about that?
I can fully sympathize with that, but sadly I think that's the case.
Trust me, Jen and I were gearing towards hitting rentals hard, and when all this started to come up, we were like, that's why part of the Zoom, it's like, is it worth it, guys? You do have to make that determination. Is it worth it?
Yeah.
So you can refer out, like I said, Jen and I will handle it because, you know, we don't want to not have the ability in-house to be able to handle it. You know, we'll definitely handle it. And again, even if you decide to handle it yourself, please know that the whole background check process, that's the $125 processing fee, is in fact handled by admin. So we'll send you, I think that's the cool part about it. I don't think there's anyone on here that's gotten to experience it yet, but you send us an email with the address of the property. We import it into our portal, and then we send you a link, and it's a specific link that goes right to that property. And I would suggest storing that link probably in your app file so that it's handy, ready to go when you do have a suggested preferred qualified, you know, potential applicant. And then you simply email them that link, and it's all again online, and we'll deal with them directly. Basically, we check the backgrounds, everything on your behalf. Also from that portal, we request any follow-up documentation, like we need ID, pictures of their pet even, all of that stuff. It's all proof of income, it's all on there, so it's all things that we handle on your behalf. And then we say to you, okay, green light. And then you drop the lease.
And talking about pets, we are also working on a policy on assistance animals, because that's really a big thing. And like I said in the beginning, those are not pets. And that doesn't matter if they are emotional support animals or they're service animals. They are not pets and cannot be treated as pets. They are working animals. And in most cases, almost impossible to deny.
Yep.
Unless they bark.
That does not count, because the definition of a service animal is the
Come
first.
on, man. I read that on Facebook. Gotta be real. Gotta be real.
The only exception for a service animal not to be a dog is if it needs to have hands to do things for the person it is servicing. All other cases, it has to be a dog. Emotional support animals can be anything from donkeys to snakes and geckos.
Yeah, I read about a guy that I think he had an alligator.
Yeah, that'll work. Maybe not for the landlord, but it'll work for him. Yeah. But one thing I was thinking about, I mean, I know like I said before, I totally agree with the sentiment about pedophiles and violent criminals, but honestly, would we ask those questions if they were trying to buy a house?
Well played, Ben. Well played.
Honestly, I Google the crap out of the people I work with before I even like step with them. I'm like, if I get their information, but that's it. I'm not background checking, so you're right.
No.
You're totally right.
No.
Look at you, Ben. Dropping the mic.
Do we have any more questions?
No, on that note, well played.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from Evan if he's got any new news on the financing front.
About what? Finance and what, Steve?
On the financing front, anything changed? Anything new?
You know,
Not really, and not really, which is good. Rates are ridiculously low, super low. I know everybody knows that. I'm seeing it. So refi, buying time. I mean, they're stupid, crazy low. So I'm pushing refis hard. Anybody up over 4? I mean, they're low 3s. I had one scenario this past week that came in at 2.875 on a 30-year. So I mean, they're low. But guidelines have kind of stayed firm. FHA is starting to loosen up. It's allowing us to loosen up. We when coronavirus hit, we had to go from 600 to 660 FHA, and they just dropped us back down to 620. So we're making progress on loosening back up the guidelines, and the restrictions for 640 and above are gone completely. So That's good for those FHA buyers because that cut out a lot of people back in March when it put us from 600 to 660. So, but everything else is pretty good, man. Just rocking and rolling. It's a good time to buy and finance. Money is stupid cheap right now. So,
Evan, on a VA loan, is it 6 months the appraisal has to stay, or what was, I think, because I had been looking into it, but my house, I haven't owned this house for 6 months. So is that the?
yeah, for VA, yeah, 6 months.
No, FHA.
Oh, FHA, yes, the same, 6 months.
6 months. Okay.
Yep.
What are the rates right now?
What are the rates
Yeah.
for what program in general, or like
I heard that
specific
they're
program?
doing a 20. They're doing a 20 and a 15 now.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking about refinancing, and I keep getting told to wait. I'm at 3.8, so
And is that 3.8? Is that a 30-year?
yes.
Okay, and you're looking to jump to a 15?
I was thinking 15 or 20.
I mean, I would look into it. Rates are, again, if you're looking at 15, those are high twos, depending on your details, credit score, and loan to value and all that.
Right.
If you're at 3.88, I mean, I would definitely at least entertain it if you're looking at a 20, specifically a 15-year.
Okay.
15-year rates are really low, so I would jump on it or at least entertain the option.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I have a question not regarding any of this other stuff. I want to know if anybody out there is paying for leads, like through Zillow or another source, and if they're happy with it.
I am not.
No. Okay. How about paying like for AdWare, somebody that handles like social media? I know you're supposed to be more control of it, but like follow up and stuff like that. Anybody else using any software for that or company? No.
No, not me.
All right.
What do you got going on, Shirley? You were asking the questions.
Well, I just I do open houses, and it's been great, and I'm not going to quit doing that. It's just that a lot of the people that come through there have been through Zillow, and they've been and I've had them, oh no, they don't want to work with me because they'll find the house themselves, and they're going to get that, a better deal through the listing agent. So they think so.
I mean, with that, a lot of people don't realize, like, if they go through the listing agent, they don't have their interest in mind. It's the sellers. I've had people say that, oh, well, I'll get a better deal. I'm like, you might get a good deal, but in reality, they're looking at that 6% commission.
Right.
And then when it comes to negotiating inspection items, they're not going to help you.
No, exactly. I agree, and I do throw that out there, but I was just curious. Before, when I used to, beginning of opt whatever it was city we were in, I think we're still in it. I get a hit every once in a while, but that seemed to roll real good. And I had also been I was like partners with somebody on Zillow, and he paid for everything, and I just paid him a referral, but I would get 2 or 3 calls a day from somebody in an area. You just had to get ready and jump in your car and go. So I don't know, I've been thinking about it. I'm so tired of all these emails about services for that kind of stuff. So I'm just kind of wondering.
I mean, I would just be careful. I know, like Zillow, you really have to pay quite a bit of money to be that first person that they call. You know, like they get you by, making you have to pay that extra amount.
And they do it by a percentage. So you can have a great area, but if you're not paying 100% and you're only paying 25% of those leads, they're not going to send you the best leads. I did that before and was disgusted with it, actually. So most of the leads go to companies that buy it, that pay the full price of like $2,000 to $3,000, depending on the location. And then they send those leads to that company, and then the company will disperse them sometimes.
Right.
Shirley, you getting a good amount of activity from open houses?
I have been, and I've been doing them here in the park. I've been getting, in fact, I've had some trouble with, communication. I'm so pissed I don't know how to speak Spanish, but I've been getting a lot of people coming through. They're not afraid to buy anymore. So of all genres, you know, so I'm staying busy. I always go for a brand new construction in the area simply because they look the best and they're vacant. Nobody's ever lived there. So
Are you hung up on your lead follow-up?
yeah, always.
So with that said, why don't you just, since you're collecting people's information, why don't you just hire like a virtual assistant to make calls on your behalf?
That's exactly what I was kind of been pushing towards, wondering. I mean, I've got a huge list of names and emails, and it just kills me to sit and try to figure out that crap.
I mean, everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses. Everybody has their wants and don't wants. I think a lot of people don't want to do a lot of follow-up. And if you don't, especially those leads that come in that are still fresh, just getting somebody to stay in front of them on a consistent basis, it'll pay off. It'll pay off dividends for you. That same person can still also run your Facebook ads and posts, and you write out whatever job description you want.
That's a good idea, because then they'd be more versatile.
If you are looking for a virtual assistant, I would definitely look to Upwork.com, because you get to see a lot of profiles, you get to see a lot of who they worked for before and how they succeeded in that. And then you have the opportunity to interview multiple people online before you choose who you want to work with.
Okay, did you say Upwork?
Upwork, upwork.com.
Alrighty.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. And it beats hiring somebody, because the person you hire sucks and then you got to fire that person, whatever. It's way easier to let a virtual assistant go.
And you can also actually check if they are actually working for you, because the software they use for their virtual people allows you to go through what they've been doing, unless you allow them to work outside of the software, which you sometimes have to, depending on what you ask them to do, but you'll at least be able to see that they are doing something for your money.
Gotcha. Interesting. I will try that. Definitely.
I have a quick question. It's off topic, but I represent the buyers on a for sale by owner. And I sent over the commission fee for the 3%, and they're asking if I will dual represent both sides for 3%. But I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but how do you feel about doing dual representation as opposed to saying you guys are on your own?
Just be transaction agent. You just transaction, either one of them.
If you had the listing, Gibbs, and a buyer came, you'd want to represent both sides still?
Yeah, no, that's true. I guess they're like, well, if you're not going to represent us for 3%, we're going to have to go to the market and we'll hire someone. I'm like, you're going to, I'll do it for 4%, but
yeah, there you go.
I was just curious how you guys felt about that, especially, I don't know. I've never, usually if I did a for sale by owner, it's usually the sellers representing themselves. I've never actually done both sides, so I just didn't know if there was a catch to it.
My sister tried that flat fee. She was talking to them, and they charge like a $1,500 to do the work, like the paperwork and stuff for the seller, and then also has to pay the 3% to whoever brings the buyer. So you could charge them a flat fee and say, okay, I'll do it for 3%, but I also, in order to get the paperwork and the negotiations, maybe something like that. I don't know if that would work.
Well, I think the 4% is like an extra $2,000. So I'm like, that's worth it to me, just to get it done rather than no percentage. So,
exactly.
But yeah. Okay.
And if anybody wants to do an open house in my Paseo listing, it is a beautiful home, and I really think it's going to sell fast. I already have somebody coming from New Jersey. I told her she should just make an offer on the house, because I really do think it's going to sell fast. The house down the street sold with cash offer, and I had a great showing. I had an open house, and it was really good. Had a lot of traffic. So
tell me on those fees, girl.
I know, but that place is like a resort. You can get a massage, your hair done, everybody that's buying in there is from New Jersey and New York, because they're like, I had.
Oh, we don't want to be there.
What?
No.
It's been that hot buy.
Low price of
I'm
$6.99.
buying with cash, so I'll take it.
I also have a new listing off a country club in Cape Coral. I've been getting a ton of interest on it. So if anybody is wanting to hold an open house there, it's been getting quite a bit of interest.
What's your price in that country club?
$275. It's a 3-2 pool home. All impact windows and doors and saltwater pool, solar heater.
Hey, I gotta go. I've got to meet the roofer and at my property on Timberland, and someone's looking at the property, so I have to be there for that.
Much luck.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Ben.
Bye. Do we have anything else right now? I know it took a while to get started. So.
Where can we find the recording of this video? My internet cut out like 1,000,000 times. So
if all goes well, I will post a recording on a YouTube channel and send you all a link to it. Last couple of times I've had issues with the recording, but it seems to be still recording. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to send you a recording.
okay, because I lost internet right when you were explaining the entire PDF thing. So I would love to be able to watch that.
And we will amend the eviction period to 5 years.
Okay, cool.
What do you, okay. Oh,
Yeah, thank you, Ben.
you're welcome. And before we go, I would like to remind everyone that if you refer an agent to Maxim, there is a referral fee being paid every month into your bank account quite automatically for the duration of yours and that agent's stay with Maxim. So please, if you meet anybody who think is a good fit, let us know.
Can we clarify too, we do not specialize in new agents.
No, we do not. We like people who know what they're doing.
Otherwise, you got to take them on and mentor them.
That's discrimination.
But one we can get away with.
Yeah, just wait.
Quick question, please. We have rentals. My husband handles everything. I have nothing to do with it. Am I still liable even though we both jointly own the property?
That's a legal question, but I would say probably yes. And your husband has an obligation, since he has multiple properties, to follow these rules as well. He needs to put a policy in place and follow it every time. He can't say, I like this person, I don't like that person.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I have a question. Is there a limit what a landlord can charge as a late fee? I have friends that are renting out their property and they called and asked me that, and I was like, I don't know, because I've heard everywhere from $25 to $100. So is there actually like somewhere they should be?
I think it says it in our lease. It says the maximum.
Well, they're not using Maxim Lee. She's doing everything on her own. She just called and asked me because she lives in California and she's renting her house here. And she said, is there a legal limit in Florida that I can charge like a late fee amount?
I hope not. I'm charging $250 for late fees.
Woo, okay.
But she should look at her lease that she has.
Yeah. Well, that's what I told her to do. I said, what does the lease say? And she said it was one that she downloaded offline. It's a Florida contract for lease. And I said, do you want me to send you mine? I'll be happy to. But this is the third time she's rented the property and she's never had any issues. But the tenants that they're looking at now, both have stable employment. Now, they had an issue a year ago where they were both unemployed and things like that. But they have the money. Their credit is absolute crap. And their landlord that they're currently with now said that they've been late on their rent 8 times in 2 years. And she's like, I don't know what to do about this person.
Oh, don't run it. This is crazy.
Isn't that a bad reference? Like, if we can go for references, can we go off of bad references?
Well,
Don't even take a risk. I'm telling you, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
back to
Don't
what
even
Ben
take
was
it.
saying, it's their own policy that they have in place, whatever that policy is.
Yeah, it sounds a little too risky for me. I wouldn't rent to them, but it's not my house.
Yeah, me and my husband, we've been renting for over 20 some years. You know, we did all crazy thing. We take a door from our house before because that person don't pay rent. We did everything. Don't rent that person. Serious, right? We have to carry the gun to collect the rent. I'm telling you.
Oh, you took the front door off?
Jim, don't play.
That was the day.
You don't play.
Because, well, the problem is, you knock the door, there's nobody answer, and you write a letter for them and put a note on there, and nobody care. And we're thinking that person maybe abandoned that property, so we just take the door off and found their full furniture, everything, the trash over there. And after we take the door off, we checked the bag for 3 days, I believe, and everything gone. So we put the door back and rerun it again.
I think that's perfectly fine, right, Ben?
Absolutely.
And nobody sue us, though. Nobody sue us. We did that all crazy. That's why I'm so. I don't want to deal with rent. I used to have 10 rentals. I'm done.
No. About the late fee, that might be a quick question for Jay if you want to know. But I think at some point there might be a limit, but I don't think there's a set limit. And like I said, I hope not, because my standard late fee is $250.
Got it. Okay.
There's a limit to how much you can charge for a return check, though.
That I do know. Yeah. But it was just more the late fee they were worried about. I told him, I said, look, if you're that worried about it and you want to move forward with them, just have them automatic debit from their bank account every month on the 1st. Got a requirement and a higher security deposit. If they're still interested, then great.
Yeah.
And then they're going to start paying Morgan hourly for her advice.
Yeah, no kidding. No, I'm pretty sure that's not legal.
Well, I know one thing. I never want to be a landlord, renter, agent at all after this meeting. Sounds like too many ways to get yourself in trouble. And just no way to really. It's like nobody's on the landlord side. It's like all renter friendly.
Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah.
Ben and Jolie will send out the policy. I mean, as long as you abide by that, it's not that complicated.
Yeah. No.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Ben. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for showing up.
Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you. And I will get this recording. It's still recording, so hopefully we can publish it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.